Hello and welcome to another video trying to get you the top grades. We are focusing on Hyde, and this is the third video in a series of 5 giving you all the quotations you need to understand the character fully. So make sure you watch the other 5, and I'll be putting links with the old I symbol in the video as we go. As usual, each quotation is linked to these 5 themes, and writing about any 2 of these themes will raise your grade into grade 7, as long as you don't write rubbish, of course, and you can get more than grade 7 linking to these themes all the way through. Okay, let's dive into the quotation. So Utterson is speaking after he's met Hyde, and he's speaking through the omniscient narrator. But not all of these together could explain the hitherto unknown disgust, loathing and fear with which Mr. Utterson regarded him. "There must be something else," said the perplexed gentleman. "There is something more, if I could find a name for it. God bless me, the man seems hardly human. Something troglodytic, shall we say, or can it be the old story of Dr. Fell? Or is it the mere radiance of a foul soul that thus transpires through and transfigures its clay continent? The last, I think, for oh my poor Harry Jekyll, if ever I read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend." So I'll translate all that as we go. We're diving straight in to the Christian morality tale. Remember, Stevenson's writing this book in a hurry. It takes him 3 days to write, and he really needs it because he needs cash quickly. So he has to give his readership what they want. His readership are largely Christian, probably 98% of them are Christian, and so he has to give them a book which ties in with their Christian beliefs. But remember, Stevenson himself is not a Christian, and therefore he might have an undercurrent or subtle hints that not is all right with Christian belief. But that has to be a gentle undercurrent that his Christian readers won't necessarily spot. So, consequently, the language is full of Christian references. Now, the most obvious one is point 2 here. Hyde is linked not just to evil, but to the metaphor of Satan's signature, which implies he's fully evil. It's though Satan has written that Hyde is his possession. It's like a prize possession because Hyde is so evil. And it also implies that Hyde is evil throughout, which is why Satan can put his signature on it as a stamp of approval. Yes, you're completely evil. Here's my signature to prove how wonderfully evil you are. Then we have the lament where Utterson says, "O God," and it shows the effect of evil on others and the horror we should have of indulging our own desires. And this links us to the idea of the morality tale. The Victorians loved stories which told people how to behave in a Christian way because it reinforced their cultural beliefs. So here we had, "God bless me, the man seems hardly human." Well, I put the O in the wrong place there, hadn't I? And this reference to the soul, they're really worried about the effect of committing evil acts and therefore your soul going straight to hell. Now, I'm going to take you into this interesting phrase, the clay continent. So it's clay because in the story of Genesis, man was made from clay, from the earth. That's how God created man and then breathed the spark of divine life into him. But this use of the word continent implies that the man's body, although it's insignificant and easy to die, is actually to God a continent. It's of huge importance. And this is a reference to how our soul is hugely important to God. So in Christian belief, it's necessary for us not to behave in an evil way because our lives have meaning to God. He cherishes each and every one of us, And rather than seeing us each as insignificant, Stevenson contrasts that insignificance with something as massive as he could put, the continent. So that shows how important a human soul is to God, but by extension, the idea was that that soul was equally important to Satan. So your soul was your most important possession, and Christian view of the time had this understanding that God and Satan were at war with each other to try and win over man's soul. And this is why, to be a fully Christian human being, you had to avoid evil. Now, because Hyde doesn't try to repress his evil desires, he is described by Utterson as the man seems hardly human. But what's interesting here is he doesn't say he's not human. He's acknowledging that this impulse in all men for evil is a deeply human characteristic. And what distinguishes civilized man from the uncivilized is the civilized man tries to resist those evil impulses. So it's not that some people are good and some people are evil. It's some people are just better at resisting their evil desires. So Utterson acknowledges this. We're all evil, we're all susceptible to it, and that's why he asks to be blessed. Bless me, he says. So it's very easy to read the creation of Hyde as an exploration of what evil is like in order to encourage all his readers to turn away from evil and turn towards God. Now, this is linked in the Victorian reader's mind to the fear of scientific progress, because science seems to be disproving the idea that, well, not the idea, the facts in the Bible are being disproved. In other words, the Bible charts human history as being 6,500 years old, and it also suggests that the earth is only that age, but science has already proved that completely wrong. And now we have Darwin writing his treatise, The Descent of Man, where he's arguing that we're all descended from primitive creatures, not created out of the clay, as the Bible suggests, not created by God during the course of the week creating the earth. This is all just a fable, a story. So you can imagine many Victorian readers who've grown up with Christian certainty that every word in the Bible is true, are now suddenly floundering with doubt. And Stevenson plays on this fear that his audience has. This is why he describes Jekyll as troglodytic, a troglodyte. So a troglodyte was a name for a primitive cave dweller. We would think of them now as Neanderthal man. And he's suggesting that humanity is becoming worse because Jekyll has created this creature who's barely human. But remember, Stevenson is careful to say barely, hardly human. But underneath it, he's saying, well, actually, we're all still like that. We're all part troglodytic. Civilization frees us from this idea of the survival of the fittest that Darwin put forward in The Descent of Man. So it's only by becoming civilized that we can stop our primitive and evil instincts taking over. And this was a fear that certainly Victorian readers had. But the next bit's quite interesting. Dr. Fell embodies our innate fear of science, or certainly the Victorian readers. So there's a nursery rhyme. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell, the reason why I cannot tell. But this I know, and know full well, I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. And it's really interesting that he's chosen this not to describe Dr. Jekyll, but to describe Hyde. Yep, let's go back to the quotation. Something troglodytic, shall we say, or can it be the old story of Dr. Fell? So Dr. Fell is explaining Hyde. Now, partly this is a joke, because he knows, Stevenson knows, he's going to reveal that Dr. Jekyll is Mr. Hyde. So having this allusion to the Doctor is just him also having a little fun. But it's also a way of saying, look, we've always had this fear of science. It's even in the old nursery rhyme that comes from about the 1600s about Dr. Fell. It didn't have to be a doctor in the rhyme, but it is, because it embodies a fear we all have about science. So in the 1600s, of course, doctors were feared because their treatments might well kill you. You know, they didn't have enough medical understanding. However, in Stevenson's day, what he's suggesting is that science is actually going to destroy your faith in Christianity, and that's what's going to kill you, metaphorically speaking, because your soul will turn away from God, and therefore you will go to hell. So hopefully you can see that by linking the fear of science to Christianity, he's appealing to his readers' innate fears, the things that they're most scared about at the time. Okay, now speaking of things that Victorian readers are scared of, they also strongly disapprove of homosexuality. Again, that's seen as, at the time, as an anti-Christian sexuality. And what's interesting here is this idea that all these men are either reacting to the fear of homosexuality or reacting to a fear of their own homosexuality. They are repressing themselves. So, gentlemen don't talk about the love that dare not speak its name. And this was a phrase invented just a few years after the novel in 1895. But if I could find a name for it, suggests that this is at the back of Stevenson's mind. He wants to suggest that Hyde appears horrifying to Utterson because he appears to embody homosexuality, and they just don't have the language to talk about it in public. It's too horrifying to actually name in public, and therefore he doesn't have a name for it. Just as Lord Alfred Douglas spoke about not having a name for that love, homosexuality. Utterson's friendship includes a jealousy of Hyde, and we see that throughout the novel, particularly with the nightmare, which I'll talk about later. But look at how he describes Jekyll. Oh, my poor old Harry Jekyll. You know, some students say to me, who's this character, Harry Jekyll? Well, Harry is the affectionate term for Henry, so Utterson is claiming Jekyll's affection here. You belong to me, your affections belong to me, and we can infer his jealousy from this. It is on that of your new friend. So he is deeply upset that Jekyll seems to be favouring Hyde, and he can't understand Jekyll's attraction to Hyde, which again gives us this idea of a homosexual illusion from Stevenson. Now, if we follow that through, Utterson is unaware of his own sexual desire for Jekyll. He doesn't admit it even to himself, which is why it only appears to him in his nightmares. Do you remember that scene where he imagines Hyde appearing at Jekyll's bedside and ordering him to rise? So now it's not just frightening him in his nightmares, it's frightening him in real life. How do we know? Look at how he describes Hyde's appearance. He's arrived with a hitherto, so up to now I hadn't known it, a hitherto unknown disgust, loathing and fear with which Mr. Utterson regarded him. So he's fearing Hyde because he's evil in the Christian morality tale, and he's never known such disgust because he's never met a character who's so evil. But if we put the Christian morality tale aside and think about the homosexual illusions, he is disgusted and full of loathing and fear because it's making him acknowledge his own attraction to Henry Jekyll. Okay, well, here is another theme which is there purely to get the readers, or give the readers, I should say, what they want. So the stuff that his contemporary readers are reading are Gothic novels and detective genres. They're reading other things as well, but these are exploding in popularity, which is why he writes a Gothic novel with detective genre features. We get the Gothic through the over-exaggerated hyperbolic language. Don't forget to use that word, hyperbolic. Such as disgust, loathing and fear, and the man seems hardly human, exclamation mark. We've even got hyperbolic punctuation. And then we have the pursuit of mystery. There must be something else, said the gentleman. There is something more, if I could find a name for it. And so we're reading this as a detective story to find out what it is that so disgusts Utterson. Now, we could just simply have the answer, oh, right, it's Hyde's terrible evil, and then there's the added plot twist that Hyde is in fact Jekyll, or you could go for the further plot twist that it's actually Utterson's own homosexual desire that he's repressed. That is the final twist. But of course you don't have to. You could write about this whole novel without ever mentioning homosexuality at all. Okay, let's get to our final slide. And this is probably the most frequently written about theme, and it's the hypocrisy of middle-class men that Stevenson's attacking. So he is attacking his own society here. So the allusion to signature on Satan's signature on Hyde's face reminds us of Jekyll's signature on the cheque in chapter 1. Remember when Hyde is forced to pay over £90 to Enfield and the girl's family after he tramples on the girl. It is Jekyll's signature that's there, and Enfield doesn't tell Utterson whose signature it is. This represents how all middle-class men have that same signature. They are all corrupt. And all might therefore have Satan's signature written on them. So it's a deliberate allusion to bring us back to that moment. It also foreshadows the forged letter that Jekyll writes in Hyde's name. Remember, he writes this to say that Hyde has decided to run away and hide and never be found again after he's killed Sir Danvers Carew, and he gives that letter to Utterson. But Utterson later finds out that actually, no, this handwriting belongs to Jekyll, and Jekyll has forged it. He doesn't know that Jekyll and Hyde are the same person at this stage. He thinks Jekyll is actually hiding Hyde from the police. So Jekyll is aiding and abetting a murderer. Well, you would expect anybody to go to the police with this information, but no. Not only is Jekyll corrupt, Utterson is corrupt because, as a man of the law, he refuses to go to the police, and he keeps this secret. In fact, he even swears Mr. Guest, who works this out, swears him to secrecy as well. So Stevenson does this to show that all middle-class gentlemen are corrupt, and even the law, these people, the lawyers who are supposed to be upholding the law, are just as corrupt. The whole system is corrupt. It's a real attack on respectable middle-class male society. So we work out that this is therefore Jekyll's signature. He represents all middle-class men, as does Utterson, who will hide everything Jekyll has written, his whole confession. So when we get to the end of the novel, that last chapter is the last testament, the confession of Henry Jekyll, and what happens to it, Utterson hides it. He puts it in his safe. So the truth, even where we actually find out who the real murderer is still kept aside. And we somehow imagine that Stevenson has stumbled across this at a later date and taken it out of the safe and presented the truth to the whole world. And this truth is therefore not just about the scientific experiment, but also about the real identity of Hyde, and by extension, the real character of middle-class men. They're all corrupt, they're all hypocritical, and he believes this society must change. Now, what's interesting about that is many of these people would actually be Stevenson's readers. So he's attacking not the majority of his readers, but a significant portion of them, and asking them to change their morality. So here is a reminder of the themes that we've covered. If you followed them all, it's easy for you to get above grade 7. Remember, 2 on their own will be enough. If you are new to my channel, well done for sticking through to the end here. Please consider subscribing. And if you've been on my channel for ages, why not leave me a comment below? Tell me what future videos you'd like, any questions you've got. Post your essays in the comments, because other students read them and benefit from them. And if I like one, I'll also make a video out of it. Well, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.